Netflix's Castlevania Season 2 is among us. This time around, the show introduces a host of new villains as Dracula schemes to end humankind. And with the advent of this season, I thought it would be fun to compare the show to the games that they're based off of. I absolutely love the games and grew up with them, so it's been a blast to see the various monsters, characters, and items in animated form. That said, there will be some spoilers in order for me to make these comparisons, so you have been warned. I'm Dave Klein, and today we're going to talk about Netflix's Castlevania, from video games to anime. And if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy our other video comparing One Punch Man to his manga and webcomic counterparts. The Castlevania video games began with the battle between the Belmont clan, who swore to protect people from evil, and Dracula. The very first game in the series stars Simon Belmont, who's actually a distant descendant of Trevor Belmont, and who has come to represent the NES era of Castlevania games, especially with him now making an appearance in the upcoming Smash Bros. Ultimate. Which is incredible, because he was my #1 pick for a new character. Banjo-Kazooie, you're up next. I'll settle for Phoenix Red or Professor Layton though. Or Geno too. Anyways, Simon Belmont was also the protagonist of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, as the title should make apparent. And while the game changed things up by allowing players to explore in a manner similar to the future Metroidvania-style games, it failed to live up to expectations as the gameplay had shifted and it was horribly obtuse. How you're supposed to know that you have to go to this river, equip a blue orb, and crouch for 5 seconds to make a dungeon appear is beyond me. And apparently everyone else. But luckily, Castlevania 3 was returned to form, and it's here where we meet all the protagonists of the Netflix's Castlevania show. Trevor Belmont is the main protagonist of the game, who's on his journey to hunt down Dracula. On the way, he can make one of 3 potential allies: Alucard, who's, shockingly enough, Dracula's son.
Please, this isn't a bar fight. Have some class.
This is also where we meet Sypha, who we actually meet in the same way as the show. In both the game and show, Sypha has been turned to stone by a Cyclops, and when Trevor defeats the Cyclops, she's returned to normal and joins him on his quest. Unlike the show, however, Trevor can only have 1 ally per playthrough. Finally, the game also featured a 3rd protagonist, a thief named Grant, who's been turned into a demon. By defeating him in a clock tower, he'll join Trevor, and is also the best character in the game, as he can cling to walls. All I'm saying is, Season 3 better feature Grant, because he is a beast! In a fun Easter egg, this is also referenced in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, as Alucard will face fake versions of Trevor, Sypha, and Grant as a boss. While Alucard originally came from Castlevania 3, his storyline in Netflix's anime show is much more similar to the classic PlayStation RPG, and in my opinion, one of the greatest games of all time, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. His looks and features in the anime are clearly inspired by Ayami Kojima's artwork for Symphony of the Night. Not only that, but his backstory from the game is utilized as a major plot point for the show. In Castlevania Symphony of the Night, we discover Alucard was born from his vampiric father Dracula and human mother Lisa. Lisa, however, was burned at the stake in raging Dracula who vowed to take revenge on all humans. Alucard, who was there when she died, knew her final statement was to not hate humans for what they did, and seeks out to defeat his father for trying to wipe out humankind. This, of course, runs just about parallel with the anime, with Lisa's death being the driving force behind Dracula's rage. The main story of Netflix's Castlevania is set during the time of Castlevania 3. In the intro to Castlevania 3, we get the following text. The townspeople became afraid of the Belmont's superhuman power and asked them to leave the country. Fortunately, the people found a mighty Belmont called Trevor. This is frequently referenced in Netflix's Castlevania, as Trevor tells us he and the Belmonts were chased out of their home by angry townsfolk.
I want to go home. The old Belmont estate.
I was under the impression it was destroyed. Villagers, pitchforks and torches, that sort of thing.
It was.
It could also be because Trevor Belmont hangs out in cemeteries, and that's kinda weird. I'm just saying. Fun fact about Trevor Belmont. Outside of Castlevania 3, he's also the star of Konami's Pachinko series, Pachislot Akumajo Dracula. You know, everyone's favorite part about Konami. In the anime, Trevor tells us about his ancestors.
All the dark things moved into the east. I think it was a Leon Belmont who entered the region first. And he built this house and dug the foundations for everything under it.
This is a reference to yet another Castlevania game, Castlevania Lament of Innocence, on the PlayStation 2 released in 2003. In the game, Leon Belmont is the first one ever to use the famous vampire killer whip and swears his clan to fight evil for eternity. With Season 2 of Castlevania, a slew of new antagonists were introduced as part of Dracula's War Council, and it's here the show introduces elements from Castlevania Curse of Darkness, also on the PlayStation 2. Both Hector and Isaac, the humans and forgers of Dracula's War Council, were introduced in this game. Now, the game itself actually takes place after what the events of Season 2 are, so this could be potential spoilers for Season 3, although who knows where the show's gonna go, as Carmilla is completely different in the show. In Curse of Darkness, just like the show, Hector and Isaac have both been generals in Dracula's army thanks to their ability of devil forgery. The game takes place 3 years after the events of Castlevania 3, and after Dracula's defeat at the hands of Trevor Belmont. Now, here's where things are both similar and very different. In both the show and game, Hector betrays Dracula and leaves his service. In the show, this is because he's coerced by Carmilla to do so. However, in the game, it's because he's disgusted with Dracula's methods for killing humans and leaves to peacefully live on his own. Isaac, still loyal to Dracula, and even after his death seeking to destroy humans, has Isaac's wife accused of witchcraft and murdered, thus setting Hector on a quest to kill Isaac for revenge, who looks completely different in the game. So you can see that there are still pieces of that in the Netflix show, but other parts are completely different. At this point, I'm really not sure how Hector will get out of the forced employment of Carmilla. Well, okay, Trevor and Sypha will probably kick her ass in Season 3, but I'm not certain. And speaking of Carmilla, her role has frequently changed within the games and never been anything similar to what it's like in the Netflix show. Her first appearance was as a boss in Castlevania 2, where she looks like this. Yup, it's just a big old mask. While she did make an appearance as a boss in future games, her first major role was in the Game Boy Advance game, Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Here, similar to the Netflix show, Carmilla has her own castle in Austria. However, unlike the show, where she plots a coup on Dracula, in Circle of the Moon, she's attempting to revive Dracula from the dead. On another note, interestingly enough, Carmilla was a novella first published in 1871, predating Bram Stoker's Dracula by 26 years. As for the other major War Council antagonist we see, Godbrand, he's not in any of the games and is entirely original to the Netflix show. So while that covers the major characters and story, there are some other fun references that I want to put out there. When Trevor Belmont is looking over his family's old things, he finds their special weapon.
I don't believe they hid it. It's the Morning Star.
In the original Castlevania and multiple preceding titles, there were 3 stages of power for the Belmont's whip. The first of these being the long chain, the second being the fighting chain, and finally the best being the Morning Star. Even though this makes 0 sense, as a Morning Star isn't a whip and looks like this. Either way, it's a cool nod to the game, and I appreciate that even visually the whip looks accurate to the games. The 3D floating geometric shape Dracula uses to transport his castle looks just like the 3D shape Alucard uses to save the game in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. We also see various monsters that were originally from the games. In particular, Gaibon and Slagra stood out for me as they behaved just like in the games, with Gaibon picking up Slagra for certain attacks and the two working together. We regularly see characters use attacks and spells from the game too. This includes Alucard, who uses various spells from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, such as transporting with his sword for a certain attack, as well as transforming into a wolf. Before Dracula's death, Dracula uses the same attack that he's known for in the games, where he shoots fireballs and sometimes larger, meteor-esque fireballs at the player. And one of my favorite things, as I love the music from the Castlevania games, was hearing a rendition of Bloody Tears, originally from Castlevania 2, being played during the major battle scene of Season 2, Episode 7. For those of you who've only watched the show, I hope you learned something about the games that this show is based off of. And for those of you who played the games, if there's anything I missed or any cool references, let me know, as I'd love to find out more. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Peace.